chorus of fates had not failed in 11,000 years. That is the number you need to hold before everything else. Not failed once. Not returned an incomplete reading. Not produced an ambiguous glyph. Not gone silence on a query, while the petitioner waited in the antechamber with sweat on their palms. 11,000 years. Every civilization that had reached a certain threshold of complexity, the threshold the chorus keepers, called the moment of legibility, had been welcome to submit a query. The fee was steep. The process was long. The answer was always given. I was the third-ranking archivist when the human query arrived. That was my title. Third archivist of the Cathedral of Fates, Vethani chapter, keeper of the secondary resonance logs. I had spent 19 years in those corridors. I knew the sound the chorus made when it was reading a new species. A low, patterned thrum, frequency shifting as the oracle parsed the civilization's internal logic, its momentum, its trajectory. I had cataloged that sound for 43 separate species, 43 clean readings, 43 responses, each one sealed in the formal glyph script and delivered to the petitioner's envoy, without ceremony. The human query arrived on a morning in the dry season, filed through the Joint Treaty Commission the same as any other. The attendants noted the species designation, human, homeworld third planet of a yellow dwarf system, mid-category civilization recently arrived at legibility, and processed the paperwork without comment. No one treated it as unusual. Why would they? The commission sent queries on behalf of dozens of species per decade. The chorus answered them all. I was present in the observation gallery when the senior chorus keeper, a Vethani named Ortis Vel, opened the resonance chamber and entered the query into the matrix. The chamber was a long hall of black stone. The walls lined floor to ceiling with encoded crystal lattices, the oracle's substrate, its memory, the structure that had processed the futures of 11,000 years of petitioners without a single error. The room smelled of cold mineral and faint ozone. The crystals caught the light and scattered it in long, slow refractions, blue and amber, as they always did when a query was active. Ortis Vel read the human designation into the intake aperture. He had done this hundreds of times. His posture was efficient, unhurried. I was logging the ambient resonance frequencies, a routine duty, a number I would compare against historical baselines and note any deviation. The deviation came 60 seconds into the read. The thrum dropped, not in pitch, in character. The chorus does not simply produce sound, it produces meaning-bearing frequency. Every archivist who has spent enough time in those halls learns to read it the way a ship's navigator reads hull stress. Not consciously, not in words, but as a pressure in the chest, a change in the air. What I felt in that 60th second was not the familiar shift of the oracle, parsing a new civilization's logic. It was something I had no name for. The closest word in the Vethani record language is emeth. The silence, between two tones that should not be there. The lattice crystals stopped refracting. The amber and blue lights simply ceased. Not dimmed, ceased. I have seen substrate faults in the lattice before. They present as irregular flicker, as a narrowing of the frequency band, as partial output. What I saw was total. The crystals held their positions and held their silence and gave back nothing. The entire wall of encoded memory, 11,000 years of archived futures, went as dark as a room with no windows and no stars. I noted the time in my log. I noted that the ambient temperature in the chamber had not changed. I noted that the ventilation was operating normally. I noted these things because when you do not know what to write, you write what you can verify. Ortis Vel stepped back from the aperture. He did not say anything. He stepped back the way a person steps back from an open edge they have not seen until their foot is already over it. The three-chamber attendants were Drathi, a species whose equilibrium organs are far more sensitive than ours. All three of them moved toward the exit, simultaneously, without coordination, without a spoken word between them. I remember that clearly, the way they moved as one body, not in panic, not in haste, but with the particular economy of motion that belongs to creatures who have decided, without discussion, that they are not going to remain in a place. I stayed. I was the archivist. My function was to log what happened, and what was happening was unprecedented. And unprecedented events are precisely what archives exist to record. The thrum returned 11 seconds after it had dropped. It was different. Chorus had never produced this frequency in any reading I had cataloged. I cannot describe it in terms of pitch or timbre, because those are properties of sound in air, and what the chorus produces is not exactly sound in air. I can only say that the frequency was structured. It had the internal architecture of a completed reading, but that the structure resolved into a single glyph output where there should have been pages. One glyph. The intake aperture's output surface displayed it for approximately 4 seconds. Copied it into my log. My hand was steady. I am a trained archivist. Steadiness under uncertainty is the first discipline of the role. I copied the glyph accurately. Every line, every nested curve, every proportion. Then the aperture cleared. Ortis Vel closed the resonance chamber. He did not retrieve the formal glyph script. He sealed the chamber instead. The secondary lock, the one reserved for contaminated substrate, for lattice fracture events, for readings the senior keeper determines should not be transmitted. I had seen that lock used once in 19 years. He turned to me. He said, in a voice that carried no particular effect, "Log this session as incomplete due to substrate irregularity. Do not file the resonance frequency record," I said. "I have already copied the output glyph." He looked at me for a moment. Then he said, "Destroy it," I said. "Understood. I did not destroy it. I want to be precise about what happened in the weeks that followed, because precision is what the record demands, even when the record will not be shown." The formal commission inquiry was closed. The human query was expunged from the active case file and reclassified as a procedural non-event. Substrate irregularity, no usable data, no oracle response on record. The petitioning envoy was informed that the chorus had been unable to complete the read due to a calibration fault, and that no fee would be levied. I do not know what the envoy made of this. I do not know if the humans were told. I know only that no second query was ever filed. Ortis Vel retired from his position at the end of that season. He had held for 31 years. In his formal exit statement, he listed health considerations as the reason. He did not speak to me before he left the cathedral. The 3 Drathi attendants requested reassignment within the month. All 3 were granted transfers without formal review. The cathedral's administration did not ask them to explain. I remained. I remained because I am an archivist, and archivists remain. I cataloged 6 more species queries over the following 4 years. The chorus answered all of them, cleanly, fully, in the accustomed glyph script, with the accustomed range of futures and probabilities laid out in order of likelihood. I logged those readings without incident. The lattice crystals scattered their amber and blue light. The thrum ran its familiar pattern. The chorus had not failed. The human glyph is in a sealed case in my private archive. It is the size of a thumb. I have not opened the case since the day I made the copy. I am aware, in the way that one is aware of a sealed room at the end of a long corridor, that the case exists. I am aware that the glyph inside it is a complete oracle output. Not a fragment, not a malfunction artifact, but a finished reading, legible to anyone trained in the formal glyph script. I have not read it. I will tell you what I concluded from the frequency record alone, from the sound and the drop, and the aneth and the return, from the way the attendants moved and the way Ortis Vel sealed the chamber. I concluded that the chorus read the human future without difficulty. I concluded that the difficulty was not in the reading. I concluded that what the oracle found there was not incomplete, was not ambiguous, was not beyond the chorus's capacity to process and return. I concluded that the oracle understood exactly what awaited humanity, and that the understanding was what silenced the chamber. The human query is not in the commission archives. The chorus keeper's log for that day reads, "Substrate irregularity, session void. The 3 Drathi attendants are stationed at a border outpost in the outer reach, and have not, to my knowledge, spoken of that morning to anyone. Ortis Vel lives in a coastal settlement on our homeworld, and tends his garden, and does not receive visitors. The sealed case is in the 3rd drawer of my private archive, behind the 43 clean readings of 43 species, whose futures the chorus rendered without pause. I have been an archivist for 38 years. I understand what records are for. I understand that a record preserved is a record that can be opened, studied, acted upon, used as foundation for the next inquiry. I have not opened it. I do not intend to. There are questions that the honest record answers with its silence. This is the one I have chosen to let stand.